Hello, I'm Vinny, and the reason we're interviewing you or thanking you is because we have this thing called exhibition for fifth graders to show that they're moving up from fifth grade to sixth grade, and we all have to choose a topic, a big topic in the world. Like it could be animal poaching, it could be life underwater. It's just a bunch of like big problems in the world, and all of our topics are women's rights.
Okay.
We just have a few questions that we would like to ask you.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, so who's going to go first?
Okay, so where do you think gender inequality is the worst, and then why that place?
Okay, so that's the first question, right? Yeah, but I think that you would first have to finish introducing yourselves. So I get to know your name, I get to know the other person's name, and then I also get to know the other gentleman's name. So you introduce yourselves before I go answering your questions.
Okay, I think they did that. You didn't hear them, so they're gonna do it again.
Okay.
Say again. Noah.
Sierra.
Okay.
Stephanie.
Okay. That's great. First of all, before I go straight answering your question, I first would have to let you understand what the ACT Foundation is about. So, you know the ACT Foundation. The ACT Foundation is a Christian mission agency for compassionate care and social action. So, some of the things that we do as a Christian mission agency is to give work on domestic violence. When we say domestic violence, we mean violence that happen within the domestic setting, like a home. You understand? So issues like a husband and a wife, the wife beats the husband or the husband beats the wife, or rape case, psychological abuse, or that is what the ACT Foundation does now. And also we look at sexual and gender-based violence. The ACT Foundation is looking at sexual and gender-based violence, and this sexual and gender-based violence have to do with things like rape, sexual harassment, and the other things that have to do with sexual abuse. And then the other thing that the ACT Foundation is doing is also mental health support. So we are looking at giving support to people who have mental health issues. So just to let you understand that these are some of the few things that the ACT Foundation does. Now to go to your question, if inequality is happening and which area is the worst? First of all, we need to understand the word inequality. Inequality has to do with where the resources that are provided are not being shared equally between the sexes. So for instance, like a male and a female, and there are resources for them to share, but it's not being shared equally, or there's a discrimination against a woman because she's a woman, and that she's not able to access that resource. So that is what we call the gender inequality. So we can have the gender inequality in a social setting. We can have a gender inequality in politics. We can have gender inequalities in economics. So those are some of the things that you need to understand when we say gender inequality. Okay, so when we are talking about equality, is where, by the definition of the UN, is where resources are equally shared between boys and girls, or males and females. It's made available. for all of them equally. So there's no discrimination. Everybody can go to school. If you are a boy or you are a girl, you can go to school. If you are a boy or a girl, you can go to the market and sell or buy. If you are a boy or you are a girl, you can be a politician, a president, or not. It shouldn't be because you are a female, so you can't go to school, or it shouldn't be because you are a girl, you can't be a president, or you can't be a politician. So those are some of the things that gender inequality looks at. So now let's look at the areas where gender inequality is worse. Usually gender inequality is worse in the rural areas, mostly in the rural areas like the typical village areas. And again in Ghana, it's most often worse in the northern sector, the northern areas, the areas where they have a strong cultural belief, or they still hold up to the patriarchal system. And the patriarchal system is where they believe that the man is still in charge of everything, or the man is giving the highest respect by society. So there's a hierarchy that always you have to respect the man first. So if you want to know those places where it is worse, these are the areas. And why is it worse in that area? I'm answering the why because I know somebody is going to ask me why. The why is that some of them are because of the cultural belief systems that they practice in those areas. So some of the cultural beliefs that they practice in those areas are that women will always be at the back. When they are making decisions, the men are in front. Even the religion, another thing that also influences that is religion. In the Islamic or the religion which is mostly practiced in the northern region, the Islamic religion, when you go to worship, the men lead and the women are at the back. So some of these practices encourage these kind of inequalities in those societies. So those are some of the reasons. And when we look at Ghana as a whole, the country Ghana as a whole, one of the other areas where gender inequality is high is politics. Politics because we don't have a lot of women representing us in parliament. We only have a lot of men representing us in parliament. And there are reasons why that is happening. And that is something that a lot of organizations are working on to promote women participation in politics. One of the positives in gender equalities in Ghana is that women have access to transport. They have access to free movements. Nobody stops them from moving. They have access to economic activities. In fact, it is said that Ghana women do more economic activities. Women are more they have more voice. They participate. They are active. They are involved in most of the activities that is done in Ghana, which is a plus to Ghana. But the failure is in politics, where we don't have much women in politics. And that had to do with some of the orientations that had to go on with the electorates, those who vote, to understand that women are also capable of becoming leaders in the country. So that is my answer for your question for now. If you have any other one. Is there any other question?
Yes. Okay, so recently excuse me.
Yeah, I'm here.
Recently, have you seen any types of gender equality around?
Types?
Yeah, the different types of gender equality. Or where would you see gender equality?
inequality around different places?
Yeah, if you're talking about types of gender inequality or where you can see gender inequality, like I explained, you probably would look at gender inequality happening in the educational sector. I earlier on mentioned. So in that area, educational sector, you can see gender inequality happening there. You can see in the labor market, like in jobs, you can see gender inequality happening there. And then again, like I mentioned, in politics, you can see gender inequality happening there. And I explained, I told you that in Ghana, it is very clear that the opportunities that exist in terms of economics, like women are able to go to market and sell. And when we go to our markets, there are more women selling there, meaning that kind of space has been created for the women to be able to get themselves involved as equal as the men. But the failure, the difficulty or the challenge is in politics. It's in decision making in the highest level, like in politics. Let me put it in politics. Notwithstanding the fact that we have women in management positions, in leadership positions, we have management heading organizations and all that. But when you go to our legislature, that is parliament, there are fewer women there than men. And there we can say that there is an issue of gender inequality there. So we can also see gender inequality in the health sector. We can see that in the health sector where we have more male doctors than female doctors. You understand? So those are some of the areas that we can also see gender inequality in agriculture, where in some areas women are not the owners of the farmlands, but the men are the owners of the farmlands, and the men do most of the farming than the women. Or when it comes to property rights, men own more properties. In some cultures, men are allowed to own lands and all other things than women. So those are some of the things. But when you come to the cities and the urban areas, it's slightly different, because we have more women who are also owning properties. We have more women who are also having lands and housing. So the dynamics is different when you go to the rural areas, and it's different when you come to the urban areas. So that is I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay.
Any other questions, guys?
Who do you think has the biggest say in women's rights? Is it culture, maybe government, or maybe thoughts of family thoughts? Because maybe if the parents think something, then the kids automatically think it too. Which one do you think has the biggest say?
Okay. You said government, you said CSOs, you said parents, but you would need to understand that when we are talking about gender, it's the socially ascribed roles for male and females. So in our society, some not like as a practice, when a girl child is born, the parents go to the market and they buy gummies or play toys, and they buy those that can fit the girl child, or they go and buy guns, and when they buy the guns or they buy the cars, they give it to the boys. So we can say that at that level, the parents are trying to promote that inequality, ascribing roles to girls and ascribing roles to boys, which is not supposed to be so. That girls can do same as boys can do. But the most important, the most influencing factor in this gender inequality is culture. It's culture. Culture it's one of the most influencing factor in these gender inequality issues. And culture promotes the negative aspect of culture promotes discrimination against the girl child or discrimination against the sexes, male or female. So it's very, very important for us to lay more emphasis on the cultural practices that promote gender inequality. So that is one. Now, when you talk about the roles that individuals or government plays a role. Government is very, very, very important in helping promote the rights of women or the right of women and children in Ghana. Government plays a lot of role. Why do government play a lot of role? Because government is the one that brings up policies which can stop gender inequality or solve the issues of gender inequality.
Mr. Rex, can you say that again? The role of government.
Yes.
It's a very important part.
Yes, I'm saying that government plays a very, very important role. And one of the roles that government play is to come up with policies, regulations, or laws that will prevent gender inequality. So if we don't have the government doing that, then you can just imagine the gender inequality issues that we are going to have in the world, or in Ghana and in the world. So the government comes up with a policy and comes up with regulations that will say if you discriminate against a girl or a woman, it should be this and that should be done to you. And we have a lot of such laws. You can find some in the Domestic Violence Act, you can find some in the Children's Act, you can find some in the Criminal Code, you can find some in other documentations, policy documentations of the government. One other thing that the government also does to help solve inequality is implementation. Government ensures that these regulations or these policies are implemented by one of the government's agencies, which is, we have DOFSU, Domestic Violence and Survivors Unit. We have Department of Social Welfare, which is also there to ensure that these laws are implemented. And then we have other organizations. We have organizations parallel to government. We have the CSOs, that is the civil society groups like the ACT Foundation that we are talking to right now, which also works to make sure that those laws, regulations, policies are adhered to or are implemented or are enforced by the government. So that is what I have to say. Do you have any more?
Yes, I have a question because
Okay.
when we talk about the government's role, the
Yeah.
government on paper, everything is there, right? They make the laws,
Yeah.
there are groups, organizations, and
Yeah.
society groups
Yeah.
that help implement the law.
Yes.
Now, where is the problem then? Because obviously it has not been, I don't know, eradicated, if you like, for want of a better word.
Exactly.
So where does the problem lie? Would it be in the implementation? Would it be in the culture that is so deep-seated in the people themselves?
Yeah.
Said not to adhere to the laws? Where is the problem there?
Yes.
How is it that still have problems in gender inequality?
Yes, you've rightly asked the questions that that is even the reason why we have organizations that are trying to help solve that problem. But this is where the problem is. We have beautiful laws, we have strong laws on these ones, and we have government institutions that are supposed to look at those laws. But there's an issue of the culture, as you mentioned. Culture too is one of the issues. But what is really, really happening, or what is the underlying issue, is that most people are not aware of the existence of such laws, which they can enforce. So when you talk to most of the victims, they are not aware there is even a law that protects them. Some are even not aware where they are supposed to go when they have issues. Some are not aware. So one is sensitization and education. There's a weakness there. And then two, the weakness in government agencies that are supposed to enforce are not adequately enforcing the laws. When I say adequately enforcing the laws, when you get to them, they'll say probably they don't have, for instance, some of the challenges that we've had with Department of Social Welfare and offices, that when somebody reports a case and they have to follow up, they'll say there's no vehicle. They'll say there's no vehicle. So they are limited, their work is limited or is affected by limited resources. So people report the cases and they said there are no vehicles. So victims end up getting tired of going to report the cases, and at the end of the day they don't go back again. So those are some of the weaknesses in the system, and that is why we have civil society groups working hard to make sure that these weaknesses are looked at. But aside that, we have beautiful laws which we need to enforce. So that is one of the challenges of working against or working on gender inequality in the country.
A lot of information to think about. Do you have any other questions, guys?
I have lots of questions.
Okay, let's hear it.
All this, like, how, from your perspective, how have we like spread awareness to other people that don't know like about the laws? How do we spread that?
How can that happen?
Okay, so to be very, I'll be very happy if you, as young as you are, could come up with very innovative way to spread it. So one of it is through a simple social media design, very simple social media design to educate people who have access to social media. That's one. And two, very community awareness, like your community, your area where the school is, you guys can organize and go to the market. We have posters we can give to you and show them the posters and tell them about the existence of these. You can choose a topic. It can be rape. Now you know that most of the issues that is happening now in our schools is teachers abusing or raping students. So you can pick a topic like rape and talk about it. You can pick a topic like sexual harassment. You can pick a topic like domestic violence, and then go into your community and tell them about it. And then tell them that when they have issues, they can go to Department of Social Welfare. They can report it to DOFSU, and those people will take up the case. Or they can even report it to ACT Foundation. They can report it to ACT Foundation. So you can, those are the mediums or the systems by which we can promote that. So through first community engagement, that's campaign, or DEVES, or through the social media. It could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, it could be YouTube. You can even a short YouTube video, or it could be a short write-up article to the graphic or something like that on the topic. So those are some of the ways by which you can promote or sensitize people about it. And you also need to know that the laws that exist, like the Children's Act is there, they can make references to, like the Domestic Violence Act is there, they can make references to. We have other criminal code is there, they can make references to. So there are a lot of some of these documents that they can make references to.
Wow. Please give us a moment, Mr. Rex, to go through our questions and make sure that you haven't answered any of them, because we've spoken a lot that
Okay, so
to ensure that you don't ask a question that is already answered. You know what I mean?
okay. All right. So I'm going to go through the questions that you sent to me, and then look at which ones I have answered and which ones are left to be answered.
Okay.
Okay, so I can see that we talked about where do you think gender inequality is the worst, and
the northern part, the rural part.
Yes, in the northern part and the rural part. And then what say do the government have in women's rights? I think that I touch a little bit on that. Yes. So yeah, laws and even the idea of governments, successive governments, to come up with a dedicated ministry called the gender ministry is even enough to tell us that government has a big role in handling women's rights issues. Yes. And then the other question had to do is, what do you think gender inequality is? And I think I explained what gender inequality is.
Yes.
Or in order to explain gender inequality by the United Nations definition of inequality is based on the premises that I'm trying to read for a definition for you. The United Nations definition of gender inequality says that gender inequality means that women and men and girls and boys enjoy the same rights, resources, opportunities, and protection. So that is gender equality by the definition of the UNICEF. By UNICEF. So anything that is not in consonant with the definition is gender inequality. So where we don't have girls and boys, men and women having the same rights, having the same resources, enjoying the same opportunities and protection, then there is a gender inequality. And I explained that in politics we are having difficulties or challenges in politics because we have more men in political power positions than women, and that is gender inequality. And I also
more boys, for example.
Yeah, more boys.
Girls, there's some inequality.
That's right. That's right. And I also said that there is a much improved equality issue when it comes to economics. That is, women will have opportunity to sell anything they want to sell, and when you go into our markets, there are more women selling than men.
Mr. Rex, why do you think that's the case? I mean, if we have a problem with gender equality in any other domains, why not in economics?
Yes, and that is a very, very interesting question, which is now going up. EU has asked that question. I went for a gender analysis, and they asked the same question, and it's something that is really worrying because with the comparisons that was made between Ghana, Benin, Burkina Faso has a very their systems, their gender inequality issues is worse than Ghana. Women don't move easily. When you go to Benin, women don't move easily. When you have to go to the market, you have to ask permission from your husband. Whatever you do, you have to take permission from your husband before you do it. But in Ghana, it's not like that. We are more liberated in that area. But our main challenge is in women getting into politics, and some of the one of the major reasons is the mentality of the electorates. Physically, they will say, some of them will say, oh, we believe in women, let them go. But when they go to voting, then they vote against them. So we need to do more orientation and training for the electorates to understand that when a woman is standing and she has all the qualities to be able to lead, they need to give her the nod. So that is where there is a little bit of challenge in that area. Yes, it has to do with the mind.
Yeah, it's a little hypocritical, wouldn't you think? Because you would expect it to be across board.
Yes.
But when it comes to economic practices, buying and selling, making money, that one it's okay for the women to get involved in that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But in other places like the politics and decision making, they don't want them to do that.
So yes.
Yeah.
But they don't want them to do that. It's not the laws that are not there. It's the mindset, because the structure is there. We have seen a lot of women who go in and stand, pick up forms and go there standing for positions. We have seen a lot of that. But they are not able to go beyond just picking the form.
And you know, the correct, I think part of the problem with women themselves, I think that we ourselves are holding each other back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is also that.
What do you think about the caution that the women have about this situation?
Right. So this is the exact same question. Women are cautious about. Like, can you speak to that a little bit, Mr. Rex? You know, the role of the women themselves.
Yes. You know, in talking about these things, most often what comes up is that our population, it's always said that women are 51% and men are 50%. So it means that women are more than men when we talk about population. Yet when women stand in for positions, they don't get the votes. So meaning that even the women themselves don't even vote for their colleague women. And I think that